Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of MDBot for her. Today's guest is a force in redefining what midlife truly means. Dimple is the founder and CEO of Voyage Soap, a movement and consultancy helping women stop shrinking and helping brands stop ignoring a 600 billion market, midlife women. With over 25 years of experience leading large scale transformation across global brands, including PwC, KMPG, HSBC, Google, and more, she operates at the intersection of commercial strategy, AI, cultural change, and human behavior. She is the creator of the Economics of Midlife, a framework helping companies unlock one of the most powerful yet undeserved audience in the world, women 40 and beyond. She is also an executive coach, AI strategist, former entrepreneur, solo mom by choice, and a woman who unapologetically believes that midlife is not decline, it's a design or it's design. Dimple, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, what an amazing introduction. I'll have to hire you.
Let's start with your journey. Let's start about what your work is and how you have started this journey. So I'll take you there. Like you say that midlife isn't a crisis but an evolution. So what did midlife burn away in you that your 30s never could?
It's really interesting. It all started when I made the decision to have a child on my own. So that's not the normal thing to do. Normally you get married, you have children, it's that way. And, a lot of people have children before they get married or they don't get married at all. But I hadn't met the right partner and I knew I desperately wanted to be a mum. And so I went through the whole process, IVF, I've got now a nearly 9-year-old son who is genuinely the love of my life. And it was during that whole process, I was like 42, 43. And, I gave birth. I had actually a really pleasant pregnancy. I enjoyed the whole journey. And I remember just thinking, God, I'm technically now in my midlife. And actually, I think maybe by having a really young child, you think, well, I've got years ahead of me. I've got so much more to do, so much more to give, so much more to create. So that was the first time I started to see it as, I can't even imagine using the word midlife crisis because I feel like I'm on a completely different part of my journey. What was different between being in my 40s at that point versus the 30s was in the 30s, I felt like I was on this treadmill, like the clock was ticking. Oh my God, I haven't met the right person. I haven't got married. I haven't had the children. It felt like I was trying to tick all these boxes rather than listening to myself and going, what do I really want? So I actually felt there was a lot more pressure in my 30s. And then when I got into my 40s, if I'm honest with you, I kind of just thought, fudge it. I don't need to care about whether or not I'm married or not. I now have a child who's absolutely my world. And in terms of work, actually, he has been a massive motivation. Like, what do I really want to do? And what I could see from all the conversations I was having, all the programs I was leading, from the company I used to run, a yoga company, I could just see lots of women either thinking that they were going to become irrelevant, or they felt that they had so much more to give. And they themselves, just like me, couldn't bring themselves to say, oh, I'm in midlife or I'm having a midlife crisis. That's not how it felt. That wasn't the actual experience.
Great. So we talk about your motherhood only, like you said, and you discussed that it's the journey started from there itself. So I really want to know that, like, what fear did you have to overcome to make that decisions? Because it is such big decisions, and the community from where we come, so they take it as a very strong, bold decision. So, what will you say about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because where I was brought up, I was the only person of an ethnic origin. So I think my parents from a very early age kind of knew that I was going to just go out and do things a bit differently. And don't get me wrong, as I grew up, that definitely caused quite a few arguments. But we've always been, me, my brother, my sister, we've always been given absolute freedom. I mean, what we've always been told by our parents is go out there and make it happen. you
That's
know,
great.
but it will be hard work, and you have to make some wise choices. But try. Better to try and fail than not to try at all, because that will be your biggest regret. And it was that, you know, I got to 39. I remember being in Kensington Gardens. I was going for a long walk, and I just kept thinking, okay, I'm going to be 40 next year. And do I have any regrets? You know, you do that sort of reflection. And my biggest regret was, oh my God, I really want to become a mother. I've done a little bit of research on how I might be able to do it on my own. I've looked into adoption. I've also looked into solo parenthood by choice. And my biggest fear was, how can I bring a child into this world without a father present? That was actually my biggest fear. It wasn't what my friends would say, what my family would say. As it turned out, everybody, I do not know one person who's actually been negative towards me directly about the choice that I've made. In fact, if anything, they've been incredible. But the idea, and even now I still struggle with it, if I'm perfectly honest, is my child at a disadvantage because there's not a puppet in the picture? But what I guess I overcompensate as a result. And I remember going for that walk, and I remember thinking that if I don't do this, if I don't try, I'm going to regret this. And actually that was the first moment of that. And then literally a week later, I was going out for drinks with a bunch of people, and one of them was a woman who was in her mid-40s. And I mentioned, that I'm thinking of doing this. And she was just like, oh my God, I wish I'd done that. It's too late for me now. And the look of regret on her face was that final piece of the puzzle that made me go, okay, I need to start taking practical steps to make this happen.
Great, great. And you know, that level of trust is so rare. And I think like many women wait for permissions, and you didn't. That says a lot. And we know that our biological cycle and career cycle clashes a lot. So we have to decide. Obviously, we this is our life. We have to decide. Nobody's there to tell us that what we have to do exactly. This is why I'm doing this podcast, because from the community from where I come, so I've seen that all the women or many women are being stopped after a certain age, after getting married, or after like conceiving, or after giving a birth to a child. They don't realize that what power you have inside you. So this is such an amazing thing which you have done. And now we'll talk about your this 600 billion blind spot. So why are brands still underestimating women who are more than 40 when they are one of the most financially powerful groups?
I think it's to do with history and culture. I mean, if you think of society, and even in the UK, and I'm sure it's similar in the US and other places, once a woman was beyond 40, and particularly beyond 45, her beauty is fading. She's becoming a little bit more invisible. And we're starting to go through perimenopause. So actually our body is changing. We are getting a few more grey hairs. Everything, all the stakes start to change. The rules of the game seem to change. And because everybody's thinking that way, I think when companies are thinking about their products and their services, they are always looking at the youth, and they're always thinking of, in the longer term, they are going to be our customer. And they're right. But once upon a time, we were that customer, we were that youth, and we have grown up now. And actually, we're the ones with the purse strings. We are the most educated and financially solvent group of women that has ever existed in history. And we want to spend our money on brands that actually value and listen to us and understand us. Exactly. And I just see it in so many products. I have a newsletter that I send out once a month, and I have over 20,000 women who subscribe to it. It's an open rate of over 70%. So I know a lot of women read it. I also get an absolute deluge of emails that come to me on a Friday night. And I end up just responding to them all. But it's really interesting, the things that they talk about in terms of, all these brands don't really understand what I'm going through. And I really wish they had these sorts of products. I wish they spoke to me in that kind of way. I hate anti-aging. I don't need to be told I'm getting old. There's so much of that. And last summer, I was out in Singapore visiting my sister, and we were just talking, just chewing the fat around all of these sorts of things. What does it really mean to be a woman in midlife? And from that conversation, I ended up doing a ton of research, and the numbers were staggering. is this market at its minimum
Yeah.
is 600 billion. And that's when I'm just talking about the menopause market and a bit more.
Yeah.
When you add in the longevity market and you add in the beauty, the wellness, the financial services, when you add actually them all together, it's probably way more than that. So, but I thought, let's go with a conservative number, 600 billion, that's the minimum. This is an untapped market that I don't think would be massively challenging to really wrap your arms around and think about the different types of women in midlife.
Yeah.
We're not all the same. There's so many different varieties of us that, you know, if we can actually have products and services that, one, understand what we're going through and talk to us in that very respectful way, create products that we actually really want and the reasons why we want them. Oh my God, it's an absolute gold mine. And so my mission has been, okay, you know, I want to change the experience of what it means to be a woman in midlife, but I can't do it on my own with my one brand. The best way for me to do it is to work with partners and to work with other big brands that can create these products and create these services and talk to us in that different way. And so that's where the idea was born.
That's really amazing. Really, really, I appreciate that idea because it is very much important for someone to come out and talk about it. It is really required because everyone feels like, I will tell about the woman. It is the psychology, you can say, that when anyone start talking about our age, they talk about, they body shame us or age shame us. It becomes very like horrible, terrible, and we feel very insecure in ourselves. So it is very important to come out like someone is talking about it. It's great. Now we'll also talk about that for a woman listening at 45 who feels invisible, as you said. Where does reinvention actually begin? If you could explain it in your way.
Yeah, sure. I think during this time, because we are physically changing so much, if I go back actually and think of what was it like when we were teenagers and we were going through puberty and all the questions we had, all the emotions and the feelings and the thoughts, insecurities, confidence, all of it, that whole rainbow of thoughts and feelings that we went through, it was accepted. And we were accepted to go on this journey, if you like. We get to 40, 50, and okay, now people are talking about perimenopause and menopause. I mean, before, nobody did. My mum never told me anything about perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah.
But now I understand why she was acting the way she was, probably when she was in her 40s and 50s. But we are viscerally going through this change physically. And then on top of which, our relationships might be changing. We might be either having children, we might some of our children may have grown up and moved away from home. Some of us might be getting divorced. Some of us are thinking about, actually, I can see old age now. I'm not immortal. And do I have the finances to allow me to live the kind of lifestyle that I need? And there is, I think, all of that thrown in together, and the way society talks to us, the way advertising particularly talks of women, it's all about being less than. It's about aging. It's about, I need to fix you. And so you sit there thinking, I need to be fixed. But actually also you're sitting there going, I still feel really young. I feel like there's so much more. So there's this really weird, almost schizophrenic thing, I think, that goes on for a lot of women. And some days you wake up feeling like you're all guns blazing and you feel amazing. And then on the flip side, depending on what's going on in your life, you can feel incredibly lonely because you feel like you're the only one feeling it. And also, I think sometimes you just don't know how to get yourself out of it. And so that's why I think one of the things that I've spoken to my audience is, you know, all the stuff around well-being and longevity in particular. There are some specific things that you can do that can at least get you out of that icky zone that you're going to go through. And you're going to go through waves as well, depending on what's going on with your hormones and what's going on with your body and what's going on with your life.
Yeah, that's really nice what I've heard. Like, even you talk about that you are feeling very lonely, or the women who is in the midlife, like they feel very lonely. So that is the breaking point, like where we understand that what is the importance of a partner or a husband is obviously when you talk about this. So when I think about myself, so I think that whenever I want a shoulder, so I need my husband, I want him around me. So don't you think that this is a kind of thing which when you took this such a bold decision, so it becomes very risky or dangerous for you, that what will be how it will affect your life?
I'll be honest with you. I think looking back, I was kind of naive. I didn't think about it. It's a bit like, when someone says to you, oh, when you have a child, everything will change. Conceptually, you get it. But until you actually go through it, you realize you didn't get it. So let me give you an example. When my son was born, he was born, and I think it was 7 months later, I got bought tickets to go and see Hamilton in London. And at the time, I'd actually moved closer to my parents for a year so I could get their support. And this was the first time, and I was breastfeeding and all of that. So my parents looked after my son from, I think it was like lunchtime to the following morning. So not long. We're talking about 20, maybe 18 hours. I drove up to London. I went and met up with some friends. I watched Hamilton. I was walking through the street. I was on the King's Road and I was walking, and it's just hit me. This is the first time I've been outside in the evening. Oh my God, this is what I used to do all the time without even thinking about it. Yeah. So one of the things about being a solo mum that I really would want to stress is it is lonely. I'm not going to lie. It's, every evening I can't just pop out for a quick run, or I can't just pop out to do something because I don't have somebody else there to look after my son. And so, yes, you then fit everything within a certain amount of time. You can catch up with friends in the evening on the phone. You can do all those things. But actually, you're right. You just want that grown up in the room with you. So that is one of the hardest things. You do get used to it. You find a different way of living. You make it work for you. I also, like today, my son is actually at my parents' house for the whole weekend. Every few weeks, he goes there because I just need a few days when I can just be a proper adult and I can just have the headspace for myself. And I think I'm incredibly privileged to have that. I understand that, and I know that everybody doesn't. But I think it's being comfortable in your own skin is a really important thing, and to know that you can create your life in the evenings in particular, when it dawns on you, oh, I'm just at home on my own. It's so quiet.
That's really nice to hear. And also, I'm going to ask about the postpartum. Like, how did you deal with that? And I know that when you are in 30s, postpartum become a very different thing. But when you are in your 40s, it would have become a different thing, because postpartum is something which I think all the women are going through that. And how did you handle it? It's a very personal question. If you want, I can change it.
I'm actually completely fine with it. It was a really funny time. So, like I said, I moved out of London for a year just to be closer to my parents. They're about 20 minutes away, which was actually turned out to be an absolute godsend. When my son was born, I actually hired not just a night nanny, someone to be with me, a maternity nanny that would be with me for about a month. That was the plan. I actually fired her after 48 hours because everyone had told me that I would absolutely need one. There was no way I would be able to do it on my own. But I remember lying there and she wasn't getting him to quite, he was crying. She couldn't get him to settle. And in the end, I was doing it. Yeah. And actually, I was really enjoying it, if I'm honest with you. So I actually fired her, and I really did leverage my parents. So my parents came to my house literally every day for the first 6 weeks. I'd had a cesarean, so I wasn't able to drive. So that really helped out. But they weren't with me all the time. They were with me for maybe 4 or 5 hours. And, Indian culture. So my mum absolutely made sure that I had my food. I had like breakfast, lunch and dinner while I was with her. They would also make sure I got some rest. They were incredible. I mean, I think there is something about the Indian culture that when you have a child, they don't forget the mother. The mother is absolutely cared for. So on the positive side, that was amazing. On the flip side, the hardest part for me was the loss of identity. I don't know how it happened, but even I didn't like the way I was dressing. I I didn't like how my body was feeling. I felt ugly, if I'm honest. I felt ugly and I felt tired, obviously. And I just felt like my identity had gone. I went from being this, travels the world constantly, out there socially, always doing things in the thick of it. And all of a sudden, I felt housebound, isolated, lonely.
Yeah.
And although I had the most amazing bonding with my son, and one part of me absolutely loved being a mum, the other part of me just didn't know who she was. And because I wasn't in London that year either, I wasn't surrounded by all of my friends that I'd known. So I was also feeling a little bit like even more isolated, a little bit more like, who am I? What does this mean? And I was lucky enough to have maternity leave for a year, but it was hard mentally and emotionally. And again, like I said, I only went out in the evening for the very first time after 7 months. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, it's just crazy. I don't know why I did that. But that's I think true for all parents. You go through an identity shift and you ask yourself, who am I? And it's not an easy question to answer.
Exactly. I think this is nothing to do with the partner or husband. What I feel like that all the women go through this phase. Even when you have a partner or a husband or anyone around, I think we have to take care of our kids by ourselves. Even when I went through the postpartum, I was the one who has to go out there and feed the child, not the other one. I have to change the nappies. I have to take care of my son by myself. It is only about choosing what you loved and what choosing. Like obviously everyone is choosing, but motherhood is like it is same for everyone. Now,
What I would say though is there is a big upside. So I did find I joined a local NCT thing. So in the UK, we have this group called the NCT. And so you have a bunch of other mums and to talk to, and they've all had baby around the same time. I was listening to their conversations about, they had expectations of their husbands
yeah.
doing X and the husband wasn't doing it. So they were getting super stressed. And then there's also everything to do with intimacy and their body. And I have to say, I didn't have to think about any of those things. And so in some ways I had it easier. I was looking after a child, but I wasn't looking after a man child too.
That's great. Now we'll talk about your career and your work. So if I'll talk about that, if a woman in midlife wants to like increase her income significantly in like next 3 years, so what should she focus on?
Yeah, I think just where we are at the moment, regardless of what you do for a living, I think the ability to really develop your own personal brand is becoming more and more important. And that's because of AI, because a lot of things that you do today can be done by AI 20 times better tomorrow, right? We just know it, and it's accelerating at such pace that I think women need to just think about. I think there's three things here. One is actually, what do I want my life to look like? Not just now, but in my 50s, my 60s, my 70s. What does that trajectory look like? So I think that's important, because that will then shape when people talk about, I want to retire, or I want to do this, or I want to, like, what is it that you can be doing, and how much do you want to work? So I think that's a really important question to ask. I think the second thing is building your personal brand, leveraging AI tools. I think everything is the cost of the barrier to enter something is much easier, is to have, think about some other things that you can be doing. So even when you might wind down from a corporate career, for example, you're still using your brain, you're still feeling like you've got a purpose in life, and you're contributing. And I think that's a really important thing, because we're already going through so much emotionally and physically in midlife. And then the final thing is, and this is probably more for mothers, is how am I going to juggle the juggle? So, in terms of the work, what is it that I actually really want to do? The conversation I keep having with most of my clients and with, other women in their 40s and 50s at the moment is a lot of them aren't able to tolerate things they used to be able to tolerate. So, for years, they've been the person who held rooms and projects and things. And now they're becoming a little bit more selfish. And I think that actually genuinely happens with the perimenopausal brain. There's science behind it in terms of all of our hormones and how that actually shapes us. And we go through this period, I think, in midlife where we actually stop tolerating the crap. And we actually start asking ourselves some of those difficult questions around what actually really makes me happy? What makes me feel valued? And how is that going to manifest in the way that I work? And look, I could sit here and say, oh, go and build an online business, get some passive income. I can do all that normal stuff. What I really think is important is thinking about what your life looks like over the next 10, 15, 20 years, and think about how you can create a personal brand and offering your point of view, and leverage the skills that you've created from the many years that you've had a career. And for some people, it might be, I want to write a book. And we're so lucky now. You can even go and set up your whole platform on things like Substack. You can create different ways of creating revenue. You can leverage social media to do YouTubes and podcasts. Yeah. Anybody can, if they put the time and effort in, and by the way, it's a lot of hard work, so pick wisely. Yeah. It's not as easy as people make it look. So just pick something, but do something. And I think this is, even if you continue as a lawyer, as a banker, as a management consultant, as a teacher, as a nurse, as a tech consultant, whatever your job is right now, think about the skills that you can use and share with other people. Create a brand around that so that you still feel like you are worthy and able to give guidance and advice. And I think this is the most important thing, because so much stuff is going to be able to be done through technology. The skills and the things that you need to be able to still bring to the table is being able to work with people and to be able to understand them and to be help and support them. And so I think there's something about really leaning into your interpersonal skills that becomes even more important now because of AI.
Exactly. We're just discussing about AI and future skills, and you have already rightly said that what exactly are the skills which one must learn or one should have or one must understand to get a better career, or you can say to get a better life in future. Now we'll talk about something called leadership evolution. So how does leadership evolve for a woman in their 40s compared to their 30s? Can you please elaborate this one?
So I think a lot of it goes back to the tolerance I mentioned. I think by the time you hit your 40s, you actually really understand what value you bring to the table. Yeah. And I think one thing that women, or not enough women, are still not doing is really raising and allowing their voice to be heard. I think they're still shying away. I think they're still remaining in that comfort zone, still worried about how they might be perceived, whether people will listen to them. And I just say, you know what, just start speaking up a bit more. And you'll find that after a bit, that it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the easier it feels. And sometimes it's going to land and sometimes it's not. But that's why also the personal branding thing for me is part of the evolution, because I think by understanding what value you bring and creating a personal brand, you start to believe in yourself a lot more. And also, leveraging things like LinkedIn, for example, and Substack and various other social channels, you can bring your point of view to the table and you can start to be known for that. So I think from a leadership perspective, these women have had years probably of experience of knowing how to coach people, their teams. They've worked across businesses, they've worked in different businesses. And I think it's a self-belief thing. I think they have to believe that they can lead and not just follow. And too many times I still see brilliant women following and too scared to kind of just go for it, and not to think, oh my God, well, I'm going to retire in X number of years. I don't need to do this. Really, I think a lot of that is fear speaking. And they hold themselves back and they don't need to. So I think by building your personal brand, I think weirdly through that, you build this confidence, this viewpoint, and you learn to put yourself out there a little bit more. And the more you do that, your voice gets heard more. And then you feel more confident to use that voice. So that's probably what I would say in terms of the biggest challenge for women who really can get to the next level of leadership, but maybe just not there yet.
Yeah, exactly. I really resonate with that, and I seriously want to through my podcast also. I keep saying that come out from the shell, and you don't need to like squeeze in, and you don't need to, because a lot many friends of mine, they also ask me a lot many questions that how to handle so many responsibilities. We are juggling between a lot of things, in India also, that the culture from where we come, so they have to deal with a lot of responsibilities, juggle between so many and number of things. And coming out from that shell is very much important. Firstly, you have to take first step. That one step is required. Until unless you don't know that how you want to see yourself in another 10 to 20 years, you won't be able to do anything right now. I really want to like end this podcast with this last question. And I just really want to say that when your son look back at this chapter of your life, what do you hope he understands about the midlife?
So I actually do talk to him very openly about perimenopause, peribrain, and I do that for a very valid reason. I want him to grow up understanding whoever he ends up with. That whoever he ends up with, I want him to know that his colleagues, his partner potentially, his friends who are all female, they go through this thing in their 40s. And actually at the moment we cover it with, you're going to go through puberty in a few years. I'm going through my perimenopause, which is kind of like puberty but for when you're older. So that's one thing. I want him to look back, and I think I just want him to see that being a woman is no different from being a man in terms of what you go for. So I don't want him to ever think that men can do this, but women can't do this. Or women do these things, but men do those things. I mean, sometimes he does come up with things. Oh, we boys can do this, but the girls can't do it. And I'm like, no. Girls can do it and boys can do it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely equal. So I'm also not trying to do the whole one is better than the other. I want him to look back and just really respect women and love women and like women, because actually, and this is what I try and teach him, is, try and be best friends with women.
Yeah.
Listen to them, actually really listen to them. Because if you do that, you're probably going to come across as being the most popular boy in the room, because most boys probably won't do that. But equally, it's simple things actually about that midlife. It's a really interesting question you've asked, actually. It's a great question, because now it's going to really make me think about how is he going to perceive this time. I think he's at the age where he sees me working incredibly hard, to the point where I think he gets a bit annoyed. I mean, I do all the drop-offs and pickups, and because that's my favorite time of the day, but basically. And when he comes home, I switch off everything as much as I can, and I have a couple of hours with him. But inevitably, at some point, the laptop comes open, and I've got to answer emails and things. And I think he can just sort of see me juggling all the time. And actually, he did a bit of homework a couple of weeks ago for English. And at the end of the homework, the question was, what's your wish? And I didn't know he'd written this. I only saw it afterwards. He'd written, I want my mum's life to be easy because she's always working so hard. And I thought, oh no, I don't want him to think like that. I want him to also experience fun. I mean, I try and do it, but I feel like it's scheduled fun, a lot of it, if that makes sense. And even today, I was just thinking, I want to try and bring a little bit more of that raw connection. So I'm not fitting things in and I'm not ticking boxes like I had when he was really young. Like that time with him where we just do really silly things. Because as he's got older, I've kind of become a little bit more hands-off for the right reasons, but I feel like we've lost a little bit of that fun. So I hope he looks back on this time as also a bit of fun and not just his mum always working. Although I don't feel like it's work, and that's probably part of the problem, because with Voyage and Soap and everything around that, I can lose myself for hours in it because I'm so into it. It doesn't feel like work, if that makes sense. And even at the weekend, sometimes I know I shouldn't, but the laptop comes open and I'm just like, I have to stop. So that's something I need to work on.
Great. Dimple, thank you so much. I would like to end this podcast with this thanking note that this conversation has been more than a discussion about midlife. It's been a redefinition of power. You have shown us that midlife is not about failing, it's about focusing. not about shrinking, but expanding, not about crisis, but clarity. So, like for every woman out there who's listening who feels invisible, uncertain, or behind, this is your reminder. This chapter can be your most strategic, most financially powerful, and most defined season yet. Thank you so much for changing the story. And to everyone listening, midlife is not the end of ambition, it's the beginning of authority. Thank you so much, Dimple.
Thank you so much.